Hello everyone and welcome back to our MCPEDL Vehicle Addon Tutorial Series. This is episode 2 of our series where we'll be going over the Behavior Pack and Resource Pack. By the end of this episode, we should be successful in making a basic working version of our 3D model vehicle in Minecraft. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we start, make sure to download the files that we will be using in today's episode. The files are in the Google Drive repository that I have made specifically for this series. The files for this episode is linked in the description below. Aside that, you will also need a suitable code editor. I will be using Sublime Text for this series. You will also need a MCPEDL 3D modeling program. I personally use Blockbench. Links to the download pages of these programs are also located in the description. First of all, we will start with our Behavior Pack. Go to your add-ons Behavior Pack that you have created in the Development Behavior Pack folder. By this episode, you should already have your manifest.json set up. Now, locate the folder that you have downloaded from the repository. Go to Behavior Pack Files. Copy the Entities folder, then go back to your add-ons Behavior Pack and paste it there. This Entities folder is the absolute basic requirement to having a working entity or vehicle into the game. In future videos, we will be adding more folders such as the animation_controllers and functions folders for more advanced features. Anyway, let's go into the entities folder. We will have to add all the JSON code of our vehicle entities in this folder. Though personally, I prefer to organize my vehicles by adding an extra folder in the Entities folder. I usually name it the name of the vehicle that I am making. The name is advised to not be too long, you should keep it simple. Since I am making my Proton Saga Mk1 SPR edition, I will rename this folder Saga_Mk1. It is also advised to use the same naming convention for future folders in both the Behavior and Resource Pack. Once done, let's go into the folder. Notice the Variant folder. The Variant folder is especially useful for when you plan on making different variants or colors for your vehicle. While it is not necessary, I personally prefer doing this to keep things organized. For example, if I had a white colored version of my vehicle, I will call this folder White. Since I am making a Proton Saga Mk1 with a SPR livery, I will be calling this folder SPR. Now, we have to edit the code of our vehicle. I have left a few comments on the components of the code for you to read in better depth later on. However, for the sake of the video, I will be explaining briefly the entity behavior JSON format, conventions and how it works. An entity JSON starts with a format_version line. This format version will determine which format of code it will use. This will affect how the game will read the code. For our coding purposes, I have found that version 1.16.0 seems to be the most stable and dynamic version for coding my vehicles. A full list of valid Minecraft format versions for coding and their differences will be included below in the description. This is followed by the Minecraft_entity. This code, in order, consists of description, components, component_groups, and events. However, we will only be using the description and components parameters for this video, as these two parameters are the minimum requirements for making a basic working vehicle entity. Component_groups and events, as you might have guessed, are for more advanced features. In the description parameter, we will need to designate four main things. The identifier of the entity. The is_spawnable, is_summonable and is_experimental parameters. The identifier is the unique name for which the game will identify the vehicle entity as. For example, the creeper mob has an identifier of Minecraft creeper. As such, /commands such as /kill and /summon can be operated. However, we cannot use the Minecraft prefix as it is only used for vanilla entities. Therefore, we need to use different prefixes. I personally prefer to use prefixes according to the vehicle brand or make. This prefix should be short and simple. Using Proton_Saga_Mach 1 inch might be too long. As such, I will be using the make of my model as the prefix as opposed to using the name of the brand. I will be calling my prefix Saga_Mach 1. After the prefix, I usually name it according to its color or variant. In this case, the variant is SPR. Now let's go over the 3 is parameters. Is spawnable determines whether the entity can be spawned using spawn eggs. If false, then the entity will not be able to be spawned using spawn eggs. In relation to that, is summonable determines whether the entity can be spawned using / commands. If false, then the entity will not be able to be spawned using /summon commands. Finally, we have as experimental. If true, then players are required to ensure that their worlds allow experimental features for this entity and as a result, this add-on to work. For basic and advanced vehicle tutorials in this series, we do not need experimental features and as such, I advise you to set this to false. There are 2 more parameters under description which are scripts and animations, but we will only be using these parameters for advanced features. Now let's look at the components parameter. In components, we will assign our vehicle model the required components that it needs in order to somewhat mimic that of a vehicle. There are hundreds of components available which are designated by the developers of MCPEDL, but for vehicles, there are about 12 minimum required components which I have already included in this JSON file. A link to the full list of 1.16.0 components are available in the description. I have in fact already left a few comments of explanation in this JSON file which you can go through and read, so I will not be explaining all of these components. Furthermore, most of these components are self-explanatory or are fully explained in the comments. However, I will be going over the Minecraft type_family and the Minecraft rideable components. The Minecraft type_family component is used to designate your vehicle a type or category. For example, if I coded my vehicle type to have cars and add the command /kill at a type equals cars, it will kill all existing vehicles with the cars type. I usually give my vehicles 2 different types, one as cars while the other is a short name for the vehicle. In this case, I will give it Saga_Mach 1. The Minecraft rideable components is used to allow players and if coded, certain mobs to ride the vehicle entity. Typically, the component starts with seat_count, which determines how many seats the vehicle can have. My Saga MK1 can have 4 passengers including the driver, so I will put 4. Next is crouching_skip_interact. This determines whether the players and mobs can leave or dismount the vehicle by crouching or by pressing the shift key. Next is the interact_text. This text can be virtually anything. This text will appear on mobile devices when you get close to the vehicle. When the text is pressed, the player will ride the vehicle. Moving on, family_types determines the mobs that can ride the vehicle. Of course, we will have to list player as the main type or else players will not be able to drive or ride the vehicle. You may also add in other types of in-game mobs such as villagers, but it may be problematic to get them out once they are seated. In relation to that, the pull_in_entities determines whether the vehicle can force nearby mobs that have been listed in the family_types parameter to be seated. However, this does not apply to players. Moving on to the most crucial feature is the seats parameter. The number of seats here should be equal to the number of seats that have been determined previously in seat_count. The first seat listed here will be assumed to be the controller of the vehicle, or in other words, the driver. The seating format is typically started off with a position parameter, which is the coordinates of the seat relative to the 3D model of the vehicle. The coordinates of the seats can be determined in Blockbench by using an inbuilt Blockbench plugin which can be installed called Seat Positions. The min_rider_count should in most cases always be set to 1 to avoid more than one player be seated in the same seat. The max_rider_count should be equal to the value determined in seat_count. And that pretty much covers the entirety of basic coding behavior side. Now, let's cover the resource pack. Like previously, locate the folder that you have downloaded from the repository. Go to Resource Pack Files. Copy all the folders and files, then go to your add-ons resource pack and paste it there. We will now have to link all the media files of the 3D model, such as the actual 3D model, textures and sound effects of the vehicle with the behavior code of the vehicle. Let's work our way from bottom to top, starting with the sounds.json file. This file will determine the sound effects for our vehicle under certain conditions. First, we will need to state the identifier of the entity vehicle. We have done this in the behavior pack earlier. Now, let's take a look at the events parameter. For vehicles, there are three main conditions to fill. Namely, step, which plays for every step the entity takes, thus should mimic a car driving sound effect, hurt, which plays when the entity is damaged, and death, when the entity dies. The naming of the sounds in general should follow our previous naming convention that we had used in the behavior pack. In my case, I had called it saga_muck1. As such, we should also call this saga_muck1 to avoid too many naming conventions. The sound effects are followed by drive and hit, which are sound effects that are named in the sounds folder which we will be editing later on. For now, save the file and leave it open for future reference. Now let's go to textures. There will be two folders and a JSON called item_texture.json. Let's edit the item_texture JSON first. All of the bracketed vehicle_name should follow your naming convention. For simplicity's sake, I also typically call the actual item name image as the naming convention as well. The vehicle_name_spawn_egg is the name of the spawn egg that we will be using later on in the entity's main resource pack JSON. Make sure to also fill in the name of the resource pack under resource pack name. The directory that has been typed with the naming convention should be the actual directory that leads to the item image. To ensure this, go to the items folder. Rename it to whatever has been typed in the directory in the item_texture.json. Then, go into that folder and place the image of your spawn egg. The image must be in PNG format and must have a 1:1 aspect ratio. The item texture resolution is usually 16:16, 32:32, 64:64 or 128:128. It is advised to not go more than 512:512 as doing so may affect performance. Now, let's go to the entity folder. Rename the folder inside it to your naming convention. Then, paste your 3D model texture in here. Rename it according to the texture's variant. For example, if you have two textures for your vehicle which are different colors for your vehicle, let's say red and white, name the texture which is red to red, and the white texture to white. Since I only have the SPR livery texture, I will call my texture simply SPR. Moving on, let's head to the texts folder. We will need to edit the n_os.lang file. This language file, however, can be edited according to your language preference by changing the US prefix to a certain language abbreviation that is read by Minecraft. A list of the accepted language options are listed in the description below. In the n_os.lang file, we can edit the viewed in-game name of the spawn egg when holding it. Fill in the identifier of your entity vehicle. Then, type the name you want to appear when holding the spawn egg of the vehicle entity in-game. It can be virtually anything. Do also fill in what you want to display when players first sit in the vehicle. You will also have to fill in the vehicle entity identifier to tell the game to display the text for your vehicle. Save the file by doing Ctrl+S and close the file. We will now need to edit the sounds folder. This is the folder which contains the actual sound files that we have determined in the sounds.json file previously. Like previously, rename the sounds folder to your naming convention. Now, click on the folder. Depending on your machine, it can take a while to load. In this folder, we will store all our sound effects used, such as the driving sound effect and the custom damage sound effects when the vehicle is hit, just like how we described it in the sounds.json file. For the custom damage sound effect, I used 3 different metallic sound effects to give a bit of variety. Do note that MCPEDL only reads audio files in OGG and WAV format, so do ensure that you have converted your audio files into either 2 formats. Now, let's go back to the main sounds folder. We will need to update the directory for our sound effects in the sound_definitions.json. Rename all the vehicle_name with your naming convention. Make sure the names of the sound effects are the same as what has been determined in the previous sounds.json file. Do also ensure the directory is also correct. Notice how the hit sound effect has multiple sound directories. This will make the game play through these 3 sound effects randomly when hit or damaged. Moving on, we now need to edit the render_controller file for the entity. This file essentially tells the game how to visualize the entity in terms of texture, model and material properties such as transparency and emission. We will be explaining material properties in the next video, but for now, we will have to set up the basic data first. Rename the controller with your naming convention. Then click on the file. You will also need to name the actual controller name with your naming convention, as this will be used in the main entity JSON later on. Notice how there is the word default after the geometry, texture and material parameter. The default text will be linked in the main entity JSON file later on as well. This will all make sense once we view said file, so I won't explain this just yet. However, I will explain the is_hurt_color and on_fire_color parameter. These parameters essentially can determine the color the entity will have when they are damaged due to being either hurt or on fire. For example, when almost any vanilla mob is hurt, say a creeper, it will have a red color overlay for a brief second. Now, notice how these 2 parameters are left empty. This tells the game that when our vehicle entity is damaged due to either being hit or on fire, it will not have any color overlay. This is done for a more realistic effect. Cars do not turn red when getting damaged. Anyway, save the file. The next step would be to add the JSON code of our 3D model. To do this, go to the models folder. Then, go into the entity folder. In here, you will have to paste your 3D model JSON for the game to read it as an entity model. Simply copy the model code and paste it in this folder. Click the file and pay attention to your geometry identifier. For MCPEDL models, the identifier should always start with a geometry prefix, followed by the name of the model. The name of the model after the geometry prefix is determined by the developer. In my case, I decided to call my model sagumk1_saloon_spur_m1. As such, my geometry identifier will be geometry, sagumk1_saloon_spur_m1. This will be needed in our main entity JSON. If you decide to change the name of your model's geometry identifier, save the file before closing it. With all that out of the way, it is finally time to edit the main entity resource JSON file. Click on the entity folder. Name the folder in it to your naming convention. Name the variant folder to whatever the variant or the color of the vehicle you are currently adding. Finally, click on the state.json file. You will now see a list of parameters that we have gone through previously. Let's start with the identifier. Make sure to name the identifier according to what you have named your vehicle entity in the behavior pack entity JSON. Now, let's take a look at the materials parameter. Notice default. In a nutshell, there are multiple materials Minecraft has to offer, such as entity_emissive_alpha, which is commonly used to allow certain parts of your model to have emission. Another common material to use is entity_alpha blend, which allows translucent parts which can help imitate glass and window materials. The default material is simply called entity. This material reads all low opacity textures as opaque. Therefore, if your texture has any low opacity colored parts, the game will simply visualize it to be opaque. We will discuss how to allow your model to have suitable materials for your model in the next video. For now, let's just keep it to entity. Next, let's discuss the textures parameter. Simply fill in the directory to the texture of your model. We have done this previously in the textures folder where we pasted our model texture PNG. Now, let's fill in the geometry parameter. Simply fill in the geometry identifier of your model. Make sure there are no typos or else your vehicle will be invisible. Finally, fill in the render_controllers and spawn_egg parameters with your determined naming conventions. Below are two other parameters, which are animations and animation_controllers. We will be covering how to make vehicle animations in future tutorials, so for now, we will leave these parameters blank. Once you have filled in all the parameters accordingly, our vehicle should now be able to be spawned in-game. And now, for the moment that we have all been working up to, let's test our add-on. Open up Minecraft. Choose a world to test your add-on. Go to Behavior Packs and add your add-on's behavior pack. Since we linked the behavior pack and resource pack using the UUIDs in the previous episode, the resource pack should automatically be added when you add the corresponding behavior pack. Now, enter the world. You should search for the spawn egg name of the vehicle that we had named in the n_uslang text file. In this case, I called it Proton Saga MK1 SPA. If you coded and ensured your naming conventions are correct, the item spawn egg should be shown when you search for it. Take the spawn egg and try to spawn it. If the model spawns, then congratulations. You have successfully made your vehicle model into the game. If not, then you will have to revise your add-on files. I will make a video in the future on how to debug your add-on to easily find problems or bugs in your add-on. Anyway, although we have our model in game, you may notice that the model may look different from your model in Blockbench. Notice the opaque parts. This has to do with materials. Our model also does not have any animations, no openable and closable doors and no acceleration. All of these mentioned functions will be covered in future tutorials, so do stay tuned for those episodes. If you guys have any problems while making your add-on or have any questions, then do leave your concerns in the comments section below. Until then, thank you for watching and I hope to see you guys in the next video.